Welcome to the Organized Expat, brought to you by Tytle, the platform for expat taxes. Laurens, we're going to talk about tax residency in Germany. So, what makes you a tax resident in Germany?
Right, so we're talking about tax residency first from a national point of view, so the national law of Germany, because sometimes people are also asking us, if you're a tax resident in multiple countries, what is your primary residence? So that's more in the tax treaty sphere, but now we're first going to have a look at when do you become a tax resident in Germany just according to German national law. And there are basically two triggers.
And tax resident means that you have to pay tax in that country.
Yes, exactly. So that you file your worldwide income in that country. So there are basically two triggers. So one is just having a residence, which is the Wohnsitz in German. And two is your habitual abode, so where you spend most of your time. If that's Germany as well, then so it's basically one of those. If you meet any of them, you're considered a German tax resident.
Okay, so let's first look at the Wohnsitz, so residence. Exactly. What does that mean in practice?
Right, then you have to look at section 8 of the Abgabenordnung, which is the German fiscal code, let's say, and it basically means residence is when you have a place in Germany that's continuously available to you to use. So that could be your own apartment, it could be an apartment you rent, but it can also be, for example, a room in a friend's house, for example, just as long as it's available for you to use it continuously, and it is not relevant whether you own it or rent it. And that's also where we sometimes see questions.
Yeah, so if you have, for example, you rent an apartment in Munich, but you travel a lot, but it is available to you, what is that a Wohnsitz?
Yes, exactly. So that could be one, and of course it depends. I mean, if you have it 1 month, if you're just there for 1 month and the rest of the year you're somewhere else, then probably according to the tax treaty, they're going to say that your primary residence is that other country. But just to see if you have a Wohnsitz or not, if you rent a place long term in Munich,
and it's available to you,
then it's your Wohnsitz. So you have to look at availability and intention to use it. So those are the two criteria.
Yeah, okay, so here that would apply to you then. And let's move on to the habitual abode. So how does that work?
Right, so the habitual abode, that's section 9 of the Abgabenordnung. And you basically look at where do you spend most of your time. Like an indication of that is when it's already triggered, is if you spend more than 183 days in Germany, so
which
more
is
than
6 months,
exactly.
Half a year.
So not just a short visit, but 6 months or more, then it's automatically considered your habitual abode. But in any case, if you spend time in Germany and it's clear that it's not temporary, but you're there with the intention to stay, spend most of your time, then your habitual abode, so gewöhnlicher Aufenthalt, is in Germany, which also makes you a tax resident. So you can, for example, think of if you rent an apartment in Berlin for 7 months, for example, then Germany is your habitual abode. So you're a tax resident in Germany according to national law.
So basically you're looking at two triggers. The first one is more what you have at your disposal, like an apartment or something, a house, and the second one is habitual abode, and that's more about how long you are in that
basically
country.
Just to look at the time. And it can even be a suite in a hotel, for example. So it can be anything.
So two triggers to watch out for or to take into consideration. But what if you're in Germany only for a few months? Should you be concerned on?
Maybe technically yes, but in practice if you spend 2 months in Germany, for example, then later, according to the tax treaty, if you spend, for example, 10 months in that other country and then the rest of the time as well, then that other country is going to be considered your primary residence. So if you are just a few months in Germany, that will likely not directly make you a tax resident. But you still have to watch out, of course. For example, if you rent something for 1 year and you only spend 2 months there, then it might still be an indication for tax authorities like, this person has become a tax resident in Germany.
Yeah.
So in that case, for example, if it's a short stay apartment for 2 months, then it's unlikely that you would be considered a tax resident.
Yeah. So let's say the bigger picture is always important. Also look at have you been to other countries? So it's relative in a way. They also look at the broader situation that you're in.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then this is one of the elements that's important.
Yeah.
Why does tax residency matter? We already touched upon that, but maybe good to repeat it.
So if you're a tax resident, you file your worldwide income. So you're considered a tax resident in Germany. So you file all your worldwide income, even if you rent out an apartment in Spain, for example, or if you get interests in whatever country. If you're not a tax resident, then you only file local German income. So for example, if you have an apartment in Berlin, or if you have local employment in Germany, but you're actually a tax resident in another country. And here again, so sometimes the terminology tax resident can be a bit complicating, because you have tax resident for national law. So you can already be a German tax resident, but if you're also a tax resident elsewhere, the tax treaty might say that that other location is your primary residence. Yeah. And then that will be the country where you file that worldwide income. It could be that if you, for example, if you spent 7 months in France and 5 months in Germany, that France will be that primary residence. Yeah. Or in some cases, it might be exactly the other way around. Yeah. So that's where you look a bit more at tax treaties. So those are two things to distinguish.
So you can be a tax resident in 2 countries for local law, for domestic law, and then you look at the tax treaty, which country may...
Exactly. So the tax treaties have a tiebreaker, which is normally in Article 4 of each tax treaty. Maybe sometimes it's another article, but mostly Article 4. And then there's you have some steps to determine what your primary tax residence is. So maybe it could be that you trigger German tax residency, but you actually only stay 4 months in Germany. That country with 8 months, most of the times, just in this simplified example, will probably be your primary tax residency. And then in Germany, you just file local German income, if that's the case. But if Germany is your primary residency, you need to file all worldwide sources of income. Yeah. Maybe we should do such a tiebreaker rule or tiebreaker test. We should do that once to see how those steps, how that goes from step to step. So, but that's the way it works. So, maybe the last question here: do you have to register when you move to Germany? You have a new address there. Yeah, mostly it's within 2 weeks that you have to register, which is also just for compliance purposes, because you're making yourself known, let's say. So if you move there, then you register. You typically deregister from the place that you're leaving. That's the easiest situation. Sometimes people are keeping their home in the country that they came from, and then you might enter a gray area, like in which country am I actually a tax resident? Because if you keep a permanent home in another country, that other country will see that as a very strong tie to residency there as well. So it all depends on facts and circumstances. Where do you spend most of your time? To determine what your primary tax residency is. But if you register in Germany and it's more than a few months, then that will probably mean that you trigger German tax residency already, just on a national level. Yeah. Okay, I think that's very clear. So thanks a lot. And this was it for tax residency in Germany, and hope to see you back in the next episode. Bye-bye.